Okay, let's get the show on the road. Any public speakers? Mr. Bowden? Mr. Bowden.
First, yeah, it's on now. Don, I want to thank you. When I was here last time, I asked for a meeting with you, and magically it appeared, and I met with various people at Bridges and Tunnel at the Henry Hudson, and it was an excellent meeting. The people that were there knew what they were talking about. We had a very interesting discussion. Every problem was not solved, but many problems were solved. And it's going forward in a way that's never happened before. And you need to know that things are happening in a positive way. Is everything perfect? No. But major steps have been taken to do things in a more flexible way. I think that's the correct word to use, flexibility. Whereas before things were done in rote without looking at the circumstances that they were being done in, now there's a flexibility that's excellent. So things are moving forward in a very good way. And I look forward to more discussions. And coming down here today, there was no blockage at the Henry Hudson Bridge. From the top of the hill in Riverdale, the last, 2 miles from up the hill from Broadway, no traffic, right through the tolls. That's the first time in the morning that's ever happened to me in memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Okay. We have minutes in the file. Any changes to the minutes? No? Motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, I'll turn it over to you for the work plan.
Okay, no changes to the committee work plan. It's on page 9. The committee charter, there are also no changes to the Bridge and Tunnel Committee charter. The committee charter is on page 17 if you have any questions about it. And if there's no questions on that, we'll move on to the report on operations.
Good morning. The report on operations begins on page 20. Traffic was higher in September with 25.2 million crossings as compared with 24.5 million crossings in September of 14. This represents a 2.9% increase. Average gas prices continued down at $2.44 per gallon, $1.12 less than the same period last year. Rainfall amounts of 2.5 inches over 6 days during September of 15 versus 1.2 inches over 6 days in September of 2014. Easy Pass volume increased by 3.7% in 2015 as compared to September of 14, while crossings using cash and other payments declined 1.9% for the month. Passenger car travel was up 3.1%, and other vehicle travel declined by 0.4% from September of 2014. Preliminary monthly traffic figures for October 2015 are 4.1% more than the same period in 2014. If there are no questions, this ends the report on operations.
Any questions? Moving the agenda.
Beginning on page 34 through 35 of the charts and graphs, showing the 5-year summary of employee accident reports, lost time injuries, customer collisions, injury collisions, and the 5-year summary of contractor injuries from January 1st through September 30th, 2015. For the first 9 months in 2015, the number of employee accident reports has decreased 15.9%, and the lost time injuries for the year have decreased 30.3%. During the same period, the total customer collision rate has increased 4.2, and the customer collision rate has increased 4.2, and the injury collision rate has increased slightly at 2.1%. Contractor lost time injury rate is slightly below the 5-year average. These are my reports. Unless there are any questions, that concludes my presentation.
Okay. The Customer Environment Survey is next.
The Customer Environment Survey begins on page 36, and some highlights for the third quarter are B&T striped 140,077 linear feet of roadway in the third quarter at the Verrazano, Marine Parkway, RFK, Throgs Neck, and Bronx Whitestone bridges. B&T repaired 476 potholes in the third quarter, nearly identical to the same period in 2014. B&T swept 3,851 miles of roadway at its bridges and tunnels in the third quarter. 90.1% of roadway lights were operational in the third quarter, nearly identical to the same period in 2014. B&T cleaned 535 storm drains in the third quarter, bringing the year-to-date total to over 2,600. As of this date, Bridges and Tunnels has completed winter storm preparedness briefings with all operations staff. B&T has its full complement of 101 pieces of equipment for snow and ice control, as well as a full complement of the ice and material ready for the winter ahead. This concludes the report.
Any questions? Moving the agenda.
Okay, move on to the Easy Pass report. Begins on page 46. Our market share was more than 85% in September, up close to 1 percentage point from the year before. About 22,000 Easy Pass accounts were opened in September, about 10,000 of which were on the go, almost half. And we're up to over 640,000 on-the-go tags sold in the lane since the program began. Just make one more point on the Easy Pass report. Andrew just pointing out we're at 79.7% weekday market share at the RFK Bronx. So we're close to 80%, which we've been trying to get to for quite some time. So maybe next month. You're right. The financial report, if there's no questions, the Easy Pass report begins on page 52. Toll revenue through September was about $1.342 billion, about $19.6 million, 1.5% better than planned. Traffic's up about 1.3% against the budget year to date. It was up 1.8% in September. Preliminary October is also looking good. Revenue was up about $3 million, 2% against the budget, and traffic up about $500,000, 2% better than planned, preliminarily speaking. Year to year, we're up about 2.9% in September, despite the March toll increase, and preliminary October results also look similar, about 4.1% it looks like versus last year. On the expense side, total expenses $317 million through September, 9.7%, $34 million lower than planned. Non-labor costs were 12.2% less than planned. 17.8 million due primarily to timing, and the labor costs were also lower by about 16.2 million, 7.9% primarily due to payroll vacancies. Overtime is also looking good, down 10.6% against plan, about $2.1 million. And our support to mass transit through September, $869 million, 78.5 million, almost 10% better than planned. That concludes the financial report if there's no questions. And move on to the capital program report.
Good afternoon. The capital program report begins on page 67. In the month of October, there were 32 commitments made with a total value of $20.5 million. Through October 31st, 94 commitments have been made with a value of $306.7 million. Compared to a planned 59 commitments and a total value of $404.5 million. As of the end of October, we have committed 74% of our 2015 annual commitment plan. There were 2 project completions in October with a total value of $29.9 million. On year-to-date, there have been 10 project completions with a total value of $202.3 million, and this represents approximately 97% of our annual planned completions of $208.5 million. There were 7 task closeouts in October with a value of $50.8 million, and so far 63 task closeouts have been accomplished with a value of $151.2 million. Unless there are any questions, that concludes the report.
Construction of the new Harlem River ramp. Do you anticipate that affecting traffic when it's under construction? Or it'll just be opened, it'll just be a brand new, when it's ready, it's open?
We're planning that project. I believe it's planned for 2018. It's been planned around other work that we're doing on the 125th Street ramps and a project that New York City DOT is doing on the 127th Street viaduct. And basically all of these projects are being planned to the greatest extent to minimize any disruption. So, for example, we are hoping to accomplish some of the substructure work for that ramp as part of a memo of agreement with New York City DOT under their contract. So, to answer your question, we're taking every possible measure to ensure that collectively all these projects are executed with the minimal amount of impact to the traveling public. There will be some closures. A lot of the work can be accomplished, off the right of way, and there will be probably some nighttime shutdowns and that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Moving on.
Okay, we'll move on to the procurements.
Good morning. Procurement starting on page 79. There are no non-competitive procurements or ratifications. There are 2 competitive procurements. One is a request for approval to use a competitive RFP process for design build services in lieu of sealed bids for 4 of our capital and Sandy capital programs, and 1 procurement modification to a personal service contract which adds funds for construction support services for work under contract TN60 to be performed at the Throgs Neck Bridge. That's in the negotiated amount of $781,837.24, which is the value of all these procurements. Unless there are any other questions, these procurements are detailed in the enclosed staff summary.
Any questions? So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thanks. The last item is our customer satisfaction survey, annual customer satisfaction survey. It's an information item. The specifics are in the book. Just very generally, our overall satisfaction was down slightly, but overall, we believe our scores were quite good. Customers seem most satisfied with Easy Pass and AET at the Henry Hudson. The total increase in construction at certain facilities seemed to be drivers of the lower scores that we received in some areas, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have now or after the meeting.
How were people solicited for this survey?
It's a random survey, but it's based on traffic, and so I can't remember the right word, but basically, we make sure that we're not oversampling any particular facility.
So every crossing?
Every crossing had a certain number of people. The VN and the RFK are the biggest. We have the most people answering those surveys, et cetera.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything more in terms of the report?
Concludes our agenda.
Okay, with that, we'll conclude the meeting of Bridges and Tunnels for the month of November. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks.